Welcome to Touched and Empowered, a show created to empower individuals to value their lives by hosting think tank discussions that will inspire positive action. Touched and Empowered with Katie and Ace starts now.
So, welcome everyone to this episode of Touched and Empowered. I'm Katie here with Ace as always, and today we have one of my favorite people in the entire world. We have our friend Marie Miller, who is a certified Theta Healing Instructor and holds a certificate of science. Marie specializes in teaching people about settling or creating healthy boundaries. And I just want to start off by saying, Marie, I was in your class and it was fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It was great to have you there.
So what was it that created your desire to specialize in setting boundaries?
It actually came from a business standpoint, to be honest, the way that I've developed it. I was realizing as I was creating my own business that I'm like, oh, like I'm not very great at telling my clients no. I was like, in the very beginning, I might have gone over time and I was very awkward about like, oh, there's extra time, now I need extra money. And you know what I mean? So I went through this weird awkward phase. And then when I started teaching, I was watching my students go through a lot of the same things and their businesses weren't growing. So I'm like, oh, I think I'll like design a class just for theta healers to understand, how to set energetic boundaries. And then it kind of turned into like a book. And then the book split, and now it's also like, which is getting edited. It's now it's like a book and a series of workshops. So
That's wonderful because I
Mhm.
believe that, as you mentioned this in the class, that the boundaries that we think we have are just based on our limited understanding when we are young,
Mhm.
and that we don't always transfer or know how to transfer or translate that into adulthood.
Mhm. Exactly. And there's also too, there's boundaries that we never thought that we had to set. Right?
Could you elaborate more on that? I feel like
Yeah,
it's
Ace wasn't in the class, so we need to fill them in.
I was like, I can't go, sorry, but Katie can. But at the same time, I really wanted to go because I find it interesting when it comes to boundary setting. It's like if you knew better, you would do better. So in that realm of forgiveness, what is it that we could know better and we could do better when it comes to
The first thing is to recognize your own discomfort and to give it a voice. Because usually the way we discover that we need a boundary or where there isn't one is because our feelings are hurt. Because somebody crossed a boundary that we didn't think to set. Does that make sense? And then then you go through a whole thing of feeling betrayed, feeling angry, feeling all these different things. And then we're like, maybe I should be different moving forward. So one thing that I try to do is actually in some of my classes is like, well, here's some things you should think about setting a boundary around before you even get to that situation. I mean, a common one in dating is to just be, let's just to decide I'm not going to make out with this person tonight, right? Setting the boundary before you have the drink. Like this is just going to be lunch. Make sense? As opposed to getting into the situation and then having to decide how you feel when the other person's across from you, or when the situation's halfway through.
Ooh, yeah, that's when it gets dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you've already created that boundary internally, and you're like, no, no, no. But then, what happens when you don't take the action, or how do you know what action to take afterwards?
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, in order, so when you're, let's say, when you're dating, we'll use the same scenario. You're dating somebody, and you know you don't want to make out with them internally.
Yeah.
but then you didn't ground the boundary and you didn't put action into like, how do I explain to this person without knowing that you needed to explain, I don't want to do that. It's that. I'm wondering how we can, what should we do in those instances?
I'm very much an advocate of not explaining a boundary. Just like, you know what? I'm not here for that tonight. I just want to talk and have coffee, and I want to get to know you better before I make out. Simple as that. You can just say, and that's another thing too. I also look at like, I really want to empower, especially women, to be able to say, I just don't want to. I just no. It's just no, and without having to over-explain, without having to find, defend our no's. Which I know is tricky because I have definitely encountered people, especially those assigned male at birth, who can be a little aggressive at expecting us to write an entire essay around why we don't want to date them. And that gets a little frustrating.
Yes, it does. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So, but the more that but also too, we also know energetically that people reflect back what we put out there. So the more of the inner work that we do of this is who I am, I'm very solid in it, the less you're going to encounter the situations where you ask for a deep explanation. Right?
And I love the part about no is a complete sentence. Their explanations are not necessarily required for it. And it's interesting putting that into practice when that has not been a practice growing up. I had a very unique experience where someone asked me if I was available and I just said no and didn't explain why I was not available. And they asked me why, and I said, I have no availability on my calendar today. I'm sorry. And I didn't tell them that I had it blocked off because I was working on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because that's none of their business. There's just no availability. Sorry.
I think my favorite boundary, and I'd love to hear your take on this, Marie, is no, I don't have to. I know it's a little, it could be rude, but I honestly think that's just a fact. Yeah, I don't have to.
I love that you say the have to, because the class coming up on Sunday is around the have tos, the oaths, vows, and obligations. And how sometimes we obligate ourselves to do different things. So we wouldn't ever dare think of saying no to seeing grandma. And it's great if she's, if you want to see her and she's lovely, but what if she's toxic? But you have this genetic obligation that you have to do something. So.
Yeah, my favorite example that you gave was the child has to hug the grandparents. Or hug the aunt and uncle.
Could you? Sure. What does that look like?
Best example I can give from my point of view anyways is my mom married my stepfather when I was 7 years old. And the first time meeting his parents, who became Omi and Pop Pop, was very awkward when I was told, these are your grandparents, give them a hug right now. Because I didn't know who they were. Now, granted, I got to know them and love them, and I'm sad that they're gone. But looking back memory-wise, I can see where I was uncomfortable because I was told to hug somebody and call them grandparents when I had no idea who they were.
And one thing that happens is when, you're told that you have to give affection, you have to give affection to certain people. That kind of reinforces in the back of your brain or tells you, I don't get to have autonomy over my body. I don't get to choose who I give my affection to. If someone asks for it, like a grandma, right, that may seem innocent, but if someone asks for affection, therefore I must give it. And that way, that's also having you think about how the other person feels in regards to your affection. Because what happens if you don't give grandma a hug? Is there going to be emotional manipulation that happens afterwards? Talk about how sad she is, right? These are kind of things that teach us from a young age what our boundaries are supposed to look like, but they're not necessarily healthy. as opposed to, hey, would you like to give this adult a hug? Are you feeling it right now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
so interesting because like, so I'm gonna give you a scenario. I was at it's a little bit of a dark humor, but I was I was at during Halloween. I was with my cousins and my friends, and they're 80s babies. I am telling my age, I'm 90s, but um, essentially they were mentioning how like when we were kids, we could go out and it was fine, but now we're nervous about sex offenders or people like taking advantage of you because back when we were younger, we didn't know that those were boundaries. We didn't know that we didn't have to put up with that type of stuff. And then as we got older, now we're like, oh, we're aware of it. How do you, yeah, right? So how do you, I would love your thoughts on the experience of understanding we may not have acknowledged that these are boundaries that we could have set, and then we don't have words to it. How do you help, let's say, the growing, my 90s babies, understand that no, you really can set boundaries? Where can, like, what are some of the best, not tips, but what's something that you share in your classes that can help people understand how to grasp that more?
So the first thing that's coming up is to really come into a state of self-forgiveness. Because you didn't say no, or you used to put up with it, or maybe even it's a joke that you laughed at that you're no longer going to laugh at, and just recognizing that that's the space that you were in, and then that you're allowed to set a new boundary now moving forward. Because the ability to also change our minds is really important. Right? Does that make sense? So in consent, it's not true consent if you can't change your mind, if you don't have the ability to say no, and you don't have the ability to also change the situation. But same with boundaries. It's okay if like your boundary is one way, today and it's different tomorrow, as long as you're communicating the change in the boundaries and that you're understanding why the boundary is changing.
And the communication is definitely a key component in it. And it's almost like it's best to have the conversation with yourself a handful of times. So then that way you're comfortable in your language when you go to share it with whomever. It could be a client, it could be a business partner, it could be a significant other.
And just to walk through like how I show people how to set a boundary, it is mostly an internal process. It's understand how you felt when the boundary wasn't there, how you felt when the boundary was crossed. So tapping into, that the feeling that's speaking to you. And then understanding how you want to feel that's different. What's the new feeling you want to have? And then brainstorming about what rule do I put in place to get from feeling A to feeling B? Does that make sense? So you're not thinking about everybody else, you're just thinking about like what's going to help me feel respected. But then you only communicate the answer. Your clients, they don't need to know the entire thought process.
I love that. Let's reiterate that. So you're focused on how you're going to feel respected.
Yeah, you're going to acknowledge the hurt and the pain from the lack of a boundary. Decide how you want to feel. And then just imagine how to get from point A to point B. And when you have that answer, you're going to communicate it and hopefully not explain it at all. Just, this is my new thing. Make sense?
And I love the fact that, again, we don't have to give the explanations.
Explanations are tiring. Yes.
The only exception I would give is like, if this is your lifetime partner, you may want to like have them be part of it or part of the discussion. But we're talking about just professional mode, just like this is how my classes work. This is how my business works. Then no, I'm not going to bring them into the discussion. Yeah.
That's true because I do recall an instance where Brian and I were in the kitchen. He said and did something, and I told him never to do that again when our child, Austin, could possibly see and or overhear it.
Mm-hmm.
And he got very offended that I told him that. And it's uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable when this happens where a child can overhear or see.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up getting into a huge argument about it. I mean, part of me is like it was no big deal, but I want to honor the fact that I didn't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that did take a lot of conversations back and forth because he and I were married for 24 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of old boundaries that I ignored that I was trying to put into effect, and that can be very challenging
Mm-hmm.
with even trying to set boundaries around my time when it comes to my mom. It's challenging sometimes.
Yep. That brings up a big issue. Like the longer you've known someone, sometimes the harder the discussion is. Because we will tend to, I mean, because they might fight back, right?
Right.
They might argue with you. They might have a not awesome reaction. And also for some of us, like especially with moms and things, we're thinking about how they're going to react before we say it.
Yes, that's very true. Especially if we're in from my standpoint, it was always support everyone else, take care of everyone else. Doesn't matter what Katie's going through, Katie's going to be there to take care of friends, families, clients, whatever. And realizing this wonderful thing of you can't serve others if your cup is empty, so you have to take care of yourself first so you can serve them from your overflow. Uh, Vocalizing the boundaries now that
Mhm.
Katie time is Katie time, and I am not bending on that, has led to some very awkward, but also some very fantastic conversations. Because there are some people that are appreciative that I'm sharing with them. I am not available between this time and this time. I don't take
Mhm.
any clients no matter what, because that's Katie time.
Mhm.
So it can open up some wonderful conversations with people at the same time. And sometimes we surprise people.
Yeah. What are the touching on that? Surprising people is like sometimes we surprise ourselves when we start setting the boundaries, right? And a
Mhm.
good portion of the time, we think we did something wrong if we do it right because we haven't done
Mhm.
it before. How do you speak to the people out there that have probably set a boundary without realizing it? And how do you help them realize that it's okay to take your space,
Mhm.
to acknowledge your self value and your self worth in those moments?
Really going to be why they think they shouldn't be setting the boundary in the first place. Honestly, into a session with them because it's a lot of times it's not just like, oh, I forgot to set it. A lot of times we think they're supposed to have the boundary in the first place. So it's the fact that we are allowed to take up space, that we're allowed to say no to things and dealing with the because I was also so that's people's belief systems. I was raised with a very Midwestern belief of like I didn't have a sick day for most of my life. I've had 2 sick days. My believe that because I was just trained. I was brought to work no matter what. You just go to work sick. If you can walk, you can work. And so my first sick day was kind of like the first time I allowed myself to call in sick and to let somebody down was absolutely mind blowing. So part of it is too just doing the thing and seeing that the world did not implode. And I was going to say there was one sick day. I took my second official sick day where I actually made like 5K on my couch doing nothing and being sick because I literally could not speak that day.
Oh yeah, I remember showing up to work when I had laryngitis and I was supposed to be on the phone talking to people, and
Mhm.
it was interesting because someone would call and I'd answer the phone and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I just can't talk. So I'm going to send you an email. Can you please reply to it?" And then I was just trying to get stuff done that way so I didn't have to stress my voice anymore.
And when things happen, like we lose our voice or we get super sick, that's really our subconscious and our body telling ourselves, like, you kind of need a boundary here.
Right.
Like the reason that, part of the reason we get sick is because we're pushing ourselves too hard or things aren't working in our life and it's time for a change. All right. That's one of the ways because our physical body is tied into our subconscious. And when there's something in our subconscious that needs to shift, we're going to manifest something physical, like laryngitis, because you really need a rest and your subconscious knows that you're overworked.
Yeah. Didn't know then, but I
Yeah.
know it now. And I think it's just an awareness
Hmm.
that we're building when we're trying to identify what our boundaries are when we hadn't considered the fact that we needed to set them in place to begin with.
Hmm.
Because I'm older than Ace, and the only boundaries that I remember growing up was where I was allowed to play outside, where the safe spaces were,
Hmm.
and that you don't air dirty laundry. Nobody needs to know what's going on behind closed doors in our house.
Hmm.
Not necessarily the healthiest thing, but that's what it was. So
Hmm.
it didn't occur to me that I had to create new boundaries for myself when I was no longer in that house.
Right. Although I do want to expand on our definition of boundaries, because you were just talking about those are the ones that were vocalized,
Right.
that were set down as rules. But the other boundaries we have is sort of like in the way that people react to us, if that makes sense. Like if you go to, like every time that you're told no, that's a boundary. Every time that you're dismissed, that's a boundary. Or if there's also nonverbal ones, like if you, I don't know if you've ever been like walking towards someone, you can see that they see you and then they run away.
Oh, I see that all the time with my dog.
Yeah, right?
All
But
the
there's
time.
all sorts of like, yeah, there's all sorts of there's
Right.
nonverbal boundaries too that our subconscious takes in. So another way that it can happen is like when you're feeling unaccepted or something happens like on the playground, you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that again. That makes sense.
That's true. I had not considered it from that standpoint.
I got to practice nonverbal boundaries in the clubs in the 90s when we go out with the girlfriends to dance because it was so loud you couldn't do verbal boundaries. But we would play with like controlling the amount of eye contact that we would have with other people, deciding if we wanted someone to buy us a drink that night or if we just wanted to be left alone with the girls. And so it was a really fun exercise, just moving your energy, like moving your body in particular ways. And like, yeah,
Oh yeah, those were fun times.
it was awesome.
It was like, all right, we're gonna box this guy out. He's not in
Yep.
the circle.
Yep.
That's a real boundary because you're literally like boxing somebody out on a
Yeah.
not just energetic, but on a dance floor level. Um,
Right.
But I love the fact that the non-vocal communication was there between you and your friends, so
Hmm.
everyone picked up on it
Right. So,
versus, not having that kind of game plan ahead of time.
and I have another fun example of a nonverbal boundary that worked really, really well. Have you guys ever been to Dave and Buster's?
yes.
They're loud, they're chaotic. I was a cocktail waitress out in the games, and I did the simplest thing to get my tables to behave because people come in there because they call it Chuck E. Cheese for adults, and we serve alcohol. People would come in there in order to misbehave unless you sat at my table. I had this like fun mom energy, so I take a beverage napkin and put it down in front of each person. And if they picked it up and put their gum in it, I would like, clear my throat and make them put it on my tray and give them a new one. And every time that they moved the beverage napkin out from underneath their drinks, I would look them in the eye and replace it. It seems like a major OCD thing, right? But
Yeah,
here's
you're
what
constantly
happened.
putting down the napkins, yeah.
Yeah, the way that I'm like, no, I would insist every drink has a napkin under it, right? And then everybody would sit up straighter. They really would. They would literally, their posture would change when they saw that I wasn't going to let them get away with bad behavior in my restaurant, in my section. To the point where people would sometimes change tables, go to a different section, and then not pay their bill. Because that was their intention the whole time. But they knew I was not going to put up with that behavior. Because everyone had a beverage napkin. So sometimes we can set a really good nonverbal boundary by paying attention to details in how we interact with people.
So I have a fun story about that, and I appreciate it. So there was this one time I was working in and I'm not going to, for NDA purposes, I was working with this one company once upon a time when I used to work for other companies as an employee, and they brought me in, and my boundaries were very strong at the time. Because I paid attention to detail, I saw everything. I saw the way things flowed in and out, and nobody liked that. And every time people challenged my boundaries when it came to paying attention to, wait a minute, that shouldn't be lost. It was here at this time, and you took it. Where'd it go? Oh my goodness. Oh, the amount of, it's interesting that you said they went away. They couldn't run away. They were like there. So they had to, I think they had to take accountability, and that was terrifying. But at the same time, once they were able to finally do it, like you said, everyone straightened up and started being more respectful. What can you share in regards to that? Like, when you're setting a boundary, does that automatically mean people have to take accountability, or do you feel like you're respectfully taking accountability?
When you set a boundary, you're going to learn a lot about how people respond.
Okay.
You're going to learn a lot about who they are as human beings by how they respond to it. No, some people will just stop talking to you because they had no intention of ever honoring that boundary. Sometimes setting the boundary is going to drive people away, and if it does, it's usually for your good, right? Some people will fight it. Some people will talk back. Some people will some people will some people will actually thank you, right? But it actually shows what kind of person they are, if that makes sense. Yeah. But
that's
basically,
I was just going to say that's one of the tips that we had with how to deal with a bully. By not reacting to what the bully said, but responding with one of my favorite phrases, "You might be right," and just leaving it at that. They're not getting the reaction they expect, so they will go somewhere else to get the reaction that they expect, and that clearly leaves the boundary that you're not going to feed that desire in them, so they're not going to bother you anymore.
Yep. Bullies are psychic. They can kind of tell who's a good target.
I hadn't considered that.
Yeah. They're not going to try it if they don't think they can get a reaction, but you can always surprise them by not reacting. I had some really fun internet trolls this summer, if you want to hear about them.
Oh yeah, please.
Oh my gosh.
We love stories.
I tell you what, if you go on Facebook and you announce to the world that you are going to hold boundary classes just for women, as opposed to the boundary classes that I teach all the time that end up being all women anyway, but if you say these are boundaries for women, and especially when you make a joke about menopause with a curse word, all sorts of men have very strong opinions about this. Because again, it goes to accountability. If we're going to start setting boundaries, it means we're going to hold them accountable. So they were just so triggered. It was really fascinating, the number of people I had to block per day.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently I'm going to hell. I don't know if you knew this. Yes, this is for sure. I have the memes to prove it from several sources. But it was really interesting too to the people who would try to engage. Because the one person, like, we did have a little bit of a dialogue going, and I was talking about, like, because do I love talking about theology. And I forget one point I had him to concede on, but he was doing the thing where you wait until you gain someone's trust, but I still wasn't trusting him. And then he did like the kapow thing. It's like, oh, but what about this? Boom, now you're wrong. How some people debate.
Right.
But then it was really good. I got to be like, okay, you're not arguing in good faith. Like, you're not presenting with good faith argument. I am no longer interested in holding this conversation. I bid you good day, sir. And apparently he did not realize that I bid you good day, sir is British for I'm done and please stop talking to me. It's basically how you say F off, right? And he came back twice and I'm like, no, I'm done. Stop. And it was a really good example of how, like, men are just used to ignoring our boundaries.
That's true. And one of the boundaries could be just, I choose to no longer respond.
Yeah, exactly. So I only responded twice more after he ignored my boundaries before I blocked him. And the other gentleman was in there, and one of my students wrote back. She really loved the interaction where I said, I'm not accepting your unsolicited opinion about my intellect.
Ooh, that's nice.
And he was someone, he kept writing, so I actually did an at everyone. And that was really fun to be like, look at all the things this man needs to say, because apparently he wanted the attention. So those were some fun ways for me to set some boundaries, was to give him everything he wanted. But the most important thing is, during this whole thing, because we went on for like 2 weeks of different trolls and memes and all these things, is I didn't engage if I didn't have the spoons.
Right.
And I didn't make myself talk to any of these people, right? These interactions that I'm talking about were only when I felt really, really comfortable and when it amused me greatly to interact with them.
Amused me greatly.
Right. And those are my words. I'm only interact with trolls if they amuse me. Otherwise, it's just, blockity, blockity, block.
Yeah, I think
we don't owe them our time. We don't owe them an explanation. If a man is commenting on a post clearly written for women only, then that is their hobby, is to stir up trouble. And they're coming there without the possibility, or without the openness to have their mind changed.
Wow. Well, I'm getting like a flashback, because I remember there was this one time that I did exactly, well, I didn't do the amused part because I didn't know what to do. But out of like short instinct, somebody wrote this giant email to me once that was like really gunning for me. Like, every time that they tried to, I think the word for it was, like you said, bully. I wasn't giving them the response they wanted. Decided to take all of it and put it in an email and CC everyone.
Oh.
And all I did was go, like, I was so shocked that I didn't really know what to do. And because I didn't do anything, apparently that set a boundary. And they apologized within like an hour.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah. I didn't understand it at the time because I was 23, but I love that you reaffirmed why. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I love all of the different aspects that we are learning as we're discussing boundaries today, because there are things that I'm sure people have heard before, but there's also different avenues that we've talked about in reference to how to set and how to respond. And it's always respond. It's not react. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's responding with intent.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can have joy, we can have amusement, we can have fun with it. And realizing that if we come to it with this higher vibration, then we're none of the what used to be guilt and shame and questioning identity comes into place anymore. Because I know that was always one of my things with boundaries. Not the case, well, sometimes the case now because I'm still learning. But then again, we're always learning. But I like the idea of, if it amuses me, I'll respond. If it doesn't amuse me, nope, you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be one of my new questions when I see random messages showing up on social media. Will it amuse me to respond?
Exactly. Because I do love me a good internet argument if I think the person's arguing in good faith, but otherwise, yeah. Nope.
Right.
No, I feel like that can get not in a bad way, and I've definitely not realized how dangerous sometimes that can get. Only sometimes, not always. I've definitely done it to the point where I was like, "Oh, this is amusing. This is amusing," and then the other side, I'm not noticing that they're serious.
No.
Like they're really trying to really kind of get to me, and I'm like, "Oh, ha, ha, ha."
Well, and that's setting a boundary too, because you're not taking it as seriously as they are.
Okay.
If you're refusing to come into their energy and you're staying in your energy, right? Their goal is to make you feel a different way, and if you're staying in amusement, then that's still a boundary, even if you are engaging with them, but because you're engaging on your terms.
And we can always say, thanks, bye, click.
Yep. Like one person, as soon as he made a statement about a friend of mine who's not white, I'm like, oh, I probably should have reported them to Facebook, but I'm like, I'm gonna delete and block you. Because I actually didn't want anyone to see what he had posted. So yeah.
That's fair. I feel like it's funny because I've been running into this issue, and I'd love your expertise on this. So, I have this giant dog. I love her. She's black. She's beautiful. She's a pup. I've been getting I've been getting the boundary of I'm going to walk the other way, and I'm like, cool. I'm okay with that. I think somebody aggressively approached my dog with prejudice for being big, black, and beautiful.
Okay.
I think. But they tried to put me in the energy that they were in, very specifically what you're saying. And I was telling Katie about this, and she was always like, you know what, that's his problem. And I'm like, that's true. But if I feel like I am in danger, what do you do in those? But I'm not in danger. If anything, my dog is like really, really great.
You were in mama mode.
I am in mama
You
mode.
thought you had to protect your baby.
I'm ready to literally take the gloves off and be like, what do you want? But I don't think that's setting an appropriate boundary. So what is the appropriate boundary in this instance, especially for anyone that's a mama bear out there?
So just to get it straight, someone was like coming towards your dog. Were they trying to like have a discussion with you, or is it just an energetic thing? Or
they came in with a discussion with me, but it was kind of one of those things where I feel like they didn't realize on a subconscious level they were approaching me with a very, very aggressive energy out of fear.
Okay. So if you've identified that it's fear, right, then you can, if you have the spoons, help them understand there's nothing to fear from the dog.
I was also exhausted.
Okay. Then if you're exhausted, then you just nope out of the situation. You're just like, you know what? I'm going over here. So it really depends on like where you're at energetically and emotionally at the time. Like, do I have the spoons to re-educate this person who has a fear around my dog? Or do I just want to have a great day with my dog and go somewhere else?
And to clarify, what do you mean by if you have the spoons? Because I don't actually know that phrase.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Spoon theory has to do with like how much energy you have. Like you have a set number of spoons per day.
Oh, okay.
Right? So am I going to use my precious energy to talk to this random stranger who I owe nothing to? Or am I going to use my energy to move out of the situation and set the boundary that way? Because also too, it also depends. Like if it's someone that like I know and I love and they're afraid of my dog, then I would definitely spend the time to get them to have a good relationship. But we don't owe explanations to strangers. Unless we run a helpline, that's different because that's like within the boundaries of your work, but yeah.
And it could just be finding in Ace's situation, finding the right time where you're not already exhausted to have the conversation. But I understand because of in depth what Ace and I talked about. And for those who don't know or have not seen Midnight, Midnight is a huge black, like Great Dane German Shepherd mix, but the body is Great Dane. So we're talking.
She's only 105 pounds.
Yeah, but she's like 3 times taller than you.
That is true.
She looks gigantic standing next to you.
She's 5'6" on her hind legs. But still.
So somebody who is not familiar with big dogs.
Right.
And also doesn't speak great English. And Great Danes are novelty dogs. From what I understand, look, they're expensive, so you don't see them often.
I mean,
so there's a couple factors in there that just to be mindful of. But yes, I think definitely being in a positive energy is definitely going to be one of the key factors to help out.
And I'm also thinking maybe you can give him a cute hat so he looks harmless.
Give Midnight a cute hat.
No.
Right?
I mean,
put her in a costume. There you go. Put her in a costume every day.
I actually did. Funny that you mentioned that. So the funny thing about my Midnight, my lovely Midnight, I gave her a harness that was like super cool. It was like electric pink and electric blue, and it was like totally out of what's it called? Totally out of like a Goofy movie. Everyone loved her. The moment I put her in black.
Yep.
That's an easy nonverbal to communicate she's a safe dog if she's wearing something fun.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna order that today. It's a great boundary.
I'm just thinking of like all the fun like Goofy sweaters and doggy Halloween costumes that I could just see this Great Dane walking around now in, and it's just very amusing to me.
Yes. The truth is, we have a lot of preconceived notions. We prejudge all the time, so you may as well work with it in instances like that.
I like the Goofy hat idea.
There was certain neighborhoods I lived in or that I interacted in where like it was best for me to dress as an artist because artists were respected there and no one was going to mess with me. Because if you're an artist, you were cool and you were safe and you were protected.
Wow.
Whereas if you were just like an average, super skinny white girl in blue jeans and a t-shirt, they would treat you a lot differently. So when I was in my artist uniform, everyone's behavior towards me changed.
I see.
So it's interesting for us to understand when there is a perception that we can work with to set a boundary really easily.
See, that is interesting because I never perceived the way that we dress to be a boundary.
Oh, it is. It's under physical boundaries. We talk about it on the physical boundary day.
Because so one thing that I've noticed boundary-wise in regards to the way I look, if I go to gentrifying areas, because I'm tan, I'm safe.
Yeah.
But for my fellow not tan friends, it's not necessarily the best place.
Yeah. And since we can't change society overnight, we can change how we interact with it to keep ourselves safe. Yeah, and to have that awareness. Yeah.
And as much as I would love to continue this conversation, we're coming up on time. No.
Oh, thank you so much, Marie, for coming. This was wonderful.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Always love talking to you and sharing your tidbits of knowledge. And again, thank you for exposing me to theta healing, because I absolutely love adding that to my toolbox. And I know Ace does too, because she picks my brain all the time.
Oh,
So thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of Touched and Empowered. We greatly appreciate you, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us. We hope that the discussion today will inspire you to take positive action in your life. Until next week, be empowered.